When darkness seems to win, where are you now? When the world is crumbling, oh, I hear you say, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Hey, where are you now? When all I feel is doubt. Oh, where are you now? When I can't figure it out. Oh, I hear you say, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Hey, look up. You're not threatened by the war. You're not shaken by the storm. I know we are in control. Even in our suffering, even when it can't be seen, I know we are in control. Oh, I hear you say, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Oh, look up, child. Hey, look up, child. Look up, child. Hey, look up, child. I hear you calling my name. Hey, look up, child. Hey, look up, child.
Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I am excited to see everyone here. Just give me one second. Awesome. Great. Let me get everyone here all figured out. Awesome. Great. Good morning. Welcome. Let me make sure that I have everything ready here. Awesome. Good morning, guys. Welcome to the virtual extension. I am happy to have everyone here today. This is the virtual extension for the Education Summit. I just want to say welcome again, and please just make sure that you guys are ready to learn today because I'm excited to be here today. But first of all, most of you who do not know me, I'm going to introduce myself in a minute. But before I do that, I really want to first give a big thank you for the leaders who brought me on this platform. But first of all, my name is Zeke Wanganga. But I want to say a big thank you to the leaders who made this happen. First, I want to say thank you to Mrs. Diana Vasilovac, the president and the CEO of Global Alliance for Education of Nations, for bringing me here today. And also I want to say a big thank you to Rachel Banks, the media director of Global Alliance for Education of Nations. Thank you for bringing me here. I just want to say thank you to Mr. William Wells for putting this awesome platform together, for putting up the Esteem Village platform. You are an incredible leader. I just want to say thank you for the awesome work you do. You are fantastic. So I also want to give a quick thank you to all the leaders on the team who have been able to make this possible, all the leaders who have been put in tireless hours to make sure that this is a great event today. And I just want to say thank you guys for putting the hours in. And I want to say thank you to our interpreter today, Mr. Billy Sanders. Thank you for the awesome work you do. Mr. Billy Sanders is nationally certified interpreter, and he is here today, and he's doing an awesome job. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I am so honored to be here today. And then down to me, I just want to say, first of all, thank you guys for coming on today. My name is Zeke Wanga. Like I said, I am a student from UMK City in the University of Missouri, Kansas City. I am majoring in business administration with emphasis in finance. And today I am your host. I'm excited for this virtual extension. I can't wait. It's going to be awesome. And I want to say I am originally from Nigeria. On the other side, what I do is I host a podcast like talk show. It's called Fired Up KC, where I interview entrepreneurs, leaders, and awesome leaders just talking about leadership, entrepreneurship, and motivation. And today, I'm going to be your host, and we're going to get fired up today. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I believe that this conversation is going to help everyone, because personally, I believe that education is a foundation for every human success, and we need to get it right. So we have top leaders from different sectors today who are going to be on the panel, and I'm telling you, if you're here today, you do not want to miss out, because it's about to go down. But before we go any further, I want to play a quick video of Mayor Quinton Lucas, the Kansas City mayor, just giving a welcome remark for everyone here today. So I am going to pull up that video real quick. So sit tight, sit tight, sit tight, get a notepad, invite your people, please go share this on YouTube. Go to my YouTube channel at Zeke Nganga, share this, share it, let people watch it, and hey, let's get it. Awesome. I'm gonna put this video up in a few minutes, but I'll see you guys after the videos. Awesome.
Your mic's muted, Zeke. I don't think we can hear the video.
Hi, I'm Kansas City Mayor Quinton Lucas, and I wanted to say thank you to all who are working at this Education Summit. We know there are many challenges to children in learning these days, and even more as we deal with COVID-19. Teachers may feel stressed, lesson plans have changed, all of our families are challenged, and frankly, there are real challenges in connection with income in our community. I thank you for doing creative things to make sure that we continue to ensure that learning is something that happens every day in Kansas City and learning in new and interesting ways. I thank you for caring about holistic education. We know that it's not just the classic reading, writing, and arithmetic. It's taking advantage of some of the lessons we're learning now. It's making sure that we're building principles and foundations for our future. And more than anything, it's caring. And you care each and every day. Thank you so very much. On behalf of all Kansas Cityans, God bless you. And I hope your family stays well.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. I just want to say, you guys heard that. That is our mayor, Mayor Quinton Lucas, the most passionate, most energetic mayor you can ever have. Thank you, Mayor Quinton Lucas, for doing that awesome video. We appreciate you, we love you, and we support you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Now, moving on to the next thing real quick. We're gonna watch a video from the CEO herself, the president herself, Mrs. Diana Basilovac. She is the person that brought us all together. Man, she's an awesome lady, and I'm honored and humbled to be here. And thank you, Miss Diana, for bringing me on. So we're gonna see a video from her. It's an awesome video, and just look out for that real quick. And let's get it. Let's get it. I'm excited. Let's get it.
Hello, I'm Deanna Basilovac, CEO and President of Global Alliance for the Education of Nations, the nonprofit organizing the Education Series for Kansas and Missouri. Welcome to the virtual extension, the first installment of the Education Series. I would like to give a brief background to the Education Series and thank key individuals before turning the spotlight over to my colleague, Dr. Michael Macklin, who will provide the purpose and explain the importance of today's events. A year ago, 20 colleagues gathered to discuss educational challenges in Kansas and Missouri. We decided to create a summit and focus on 5 topics: community relations, curriculum, discipline, human resources, and social emotional health and well-being. The summit was to take place on April 4th at the National World War I Museum and Memorial, a fitting location for an inaugural event uniting for the first time academia, legislators, business owners, and community members to discuss and produce action plans of change in education. Due to the coronavirus, we have postponed the Education Summit, but we want to continue the discussions, and so we developed the virtual extension. We are discussing education during COVID-19 and education in the future. The root problems for both events are the same. I thank you for being willing to have difficult conversations about inequities in education in Kansas and Missouri. And I thank Kansas City, Kansas Community College for providing accessibility for the virtual extension. They are also sponsors for the Education Summit, along with the University of Missouri, Kansas City, Kansas Public Schools, Fort Hays State University, and our dream team of schools, Lawrence Public Schools and the Kansas State School for the Blind. A special thank you to William Wells, the CEO of Esteem Village, for providing the virtual platform for this event. And thank you to the National World War I Museum and Memorial for being so flexible during this time and for hosting future events of the Education Series. And finally, I am overwhelmingly grateful to the amount of individuals on the Education Series team who've dedicated countless hours to provide this event for you. Thank you. And without further ado, I'd like to turn it over to another champion of equity in education, Dr. Michael Macklin.
Was an awesome video from our leader, and man, she's awesome. So we are gonna be welcoming Dr. Macklin to right away. Dr. Macklin, are you in the house? If you're in the house, jump on real quick. If not, let me find you. I hope you guys are having a good time so far. Let me. Ooh. Let's make sure Dr. Macklin is here. Great, great, great. Awesome, 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 awesome. Dr. Macklin, can you give me a wave real quick? Can you give me a wave real quick? If you are in the chat, give me a wave so I can find you. Give me a wave real quick, Dr. Macklin. That was an awesome video. If you guys saw that, that was the World War II memorial. It was awesome video, and man, I'm excited. This is just the tip of the iceberg. We are about to get things started. All right, I think Dr. Macklin is in the house. Let's make way for the legend himself. Let's make way real quick. Let me see here. Let me find Dr. Macklin real quick and bring him on. There we go. Awesome. Let's get it. Let's get it. I'm excited. You guys don't even know. I'm excited. Dr. Macklin is an awesome, wonderful individual, and he's about to blow our mind. So get ready. Get ready. I'm telling you. All right, Dr. Macklin, are you here with us? Are you here?
I am here, Zeke. I am here.
Hey, let's go. Let's get it. Let's get it. I'm excited. Let's get it. I will leave and let you do your thing, and let's go.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. I am excited about today. I am excited about today. Thank you, Deanna, here for the prelude here into the purpose on why we are here. I am extremely excited about today. The purpose for today is engage, educate, and empower. Engage, educate, and empower. I would truly like to thank all the team members for making this day happen. This is truly about each one, reach one, and teach one. This summit addresses the big ideas and ever decreasing challenges in the Kansas City and metropolitan area. And so we're excited about today. Zeke, thank you for your introduction here also. It's amazing how all things work together. Today is Juneteenth, and on June 19th, 1865, 2 months after the Confederate General Robert E. Lee surrendered in Virginia, General Gordon Granger arrived in Galveston, Texas, to inform at that time the enslaved African Americans of their freedom and that the Civil War had ended. General Granger's announcement put into effect the Emancipation Proclamation, which has been issued more than 2.5 years earlier on January 1st, 1863, by President Abraham Lincoln himself. The holiday combining June and the day 19th, called Juneteenth, also sometimes called Juneteenth Independence Day, Freedom Day, or Emancipation Day. In recent years, particularly following the nationwide protest of police brutality and the deaths of George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, and now Rayshard Brooks, and other African Americans this year, there is a renewed interest in this day that celebrates freedom. The question has always been, will this day ever become a holiday? In 1980, Texas became the first state to designate Juneteenth as a holiday. And we have recently seen that this month that Nike and the NFL have also made similar announcements and joining of this day. The question you may be asking, and I'm glad that you're asking the question that you may be asking, and I'm so glad you're asking the question, is how can you celebrate this day? Well, let me tell you, you are in the right space and place for today. Today is a great start for you to be celebrating Juneteenth here with us today for the virtual summit. My second to last piece is equity. Why we are having this conference, equity. Why we're having this conference, equity. Thank you, Zeke, for helping me out. I appreciate that. There is a common misconception that equity and equality mean the same thing. There is a common misconception that equity and equality hang out together, such as salt and pepper and peanut butter and jelly. But really, the words can be used interchangeably, especially when talking about education. But the truth is that they do not and they cannot. Yes, the two words are similar. They can be used interchangeably, but the difference between them is very, very crucial. So please don't talk about equality when you mean equity. And this conference, this virtual summit is all about equity. Here's where equity comes in. The students who fall furthest behind, most often are low income and students of color. Those students require more resources to catch up and succeed, and eventually to close the achievement gap, or what I like to say is the opportunity gap. Giving those students who come to school lagging academically because of factors outside of school's control, the same resources as students in higher income schools alone will not close the achievement gap or opportunity gap. I'm sure Dr. Carpenter likes that one. But making sure low income students and students of color have access to exceptional teachers and that their schools have been receiving the appropriate funding and providing high quality education will move them on the right path and narrowing the gap. Equality has become synonymous with leveling the playing field. So let's make equity synonymous with more for those who need it. And my last point today. When I was 10 years old, my father took me into the kitchen and he had 3 pots of boiling water at that point. The first pot, he took a handful of frozen vegetables and put them in the pot of boiling water. And said, Michael, if I don't teach you the skill of inquiry and advocacy, you will become soft like the vegetables in the boiling water. He then took a hard-boiled egg and said, put it in the second pot and said, Michael, if I don't teach you the skills of inquiry and advocacy and equity, you will become hard like this boiled egg. And then he took a coffee bean and put it in the third pot of boiling water. That coffee bean immediately changed the atmosphere. This summit today, guys, will allow us to immediately change the atmosphere. I am now going to turn things over to my esteemed colleague, Carol. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Macklin. Thank you for that awesome speech. I'm out here. I'm already inspired. We haven't even gotten started yet. You already get me energetic. Thank you so much. I'm inviting Mrs. Carol on real quick. Join us if you're here with me real quick. Turn your video on and let's get things going. Awesome. Then I will leave you guys.
Hello and good morning. Thank you, Dr. Macklin, Deanna Bosolovic, Zeke Naganga, and Billy Sanders, and the rest of the entire team of the Global Alliance for Education of Nations. I am profoundly and honored to be here on Juneteenth in one of the greatest places in this nation. We are virtually at the World War I Museum in Kansas City. I'm just saddened that we can't, physically be there. But the Global Alliance for the Education of Nations of the Kansas City area acknowledges that the Kansas City area has been home to the Native American community for thousands of years. This land is located on the ancestral lands of Native peoples who were removed unjustly, and that this community is the beneficiary. There are at least 37 tribes that have Kansas and Missouri ties, including mine, the Kickapoo tribe in Kansas. Long before skyscrapers, and more recently, life spread across this region, our indigenous nations have been in relationship with the land, and with that, carry responsibilities. We honor our heritage as Native peoples and continue to teach our youth about the stewardship of this earth. As we move forward today, I would like to remind everyone that the state of Kansas is the first land grant institution established under the 1862 Morrill Act. There's at least one land grant institution in every state and territory of the United States, including the District of Columbia. In the 1800s, the United States government gave states land in the interest of building land grant universities. Then the schools would reinvest the money they got from selling the land, which was mostly in the Midwest, including 920,000 acres in Kansas. It is important to acknowledge this, since the land that serves as the foundation for many of our educational institutions were and are on stolen land. The Moral Act needs to be taught in schools, as Kansas State University, Lincoln University, and the University of Missouri are land grant institutions. This is a shameful chapter in American history, and that needs to be told within our schools. For more than 500 years, Native American communities across the Americas have demonstrated resilience and resistance in the face of violent efforts to separate us from our land, culture, and each other. But today I'm excited because we can band together and teach our children. Miigwech, thank you, and I'll give it back to Zeke.
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you, thank you, thank you, Miss Kara. Thank you so much. Thank you, Dr. Macklin. Thank you guys for coming on for that awesome, really inspirational message. Awesome. This is fantastic. I'm already energetic. Thank you, Mr. Billy Sanders, for the awesome job you're doing, man. You are doing awesome. And I just want to say, right next, I'm gonna invite our moderators for the morning session. The morning session is about to start, so I'm gonna invite Justice Horn. If you're there, come on to the stage. I want to invite Mrs. Lisa Stewart. Come on the stage if you're there with me.
Good morning.
Yes, you want to turn your video on so we can see you.
You have to turn it
you
on.
have to do that for us.
Okay, I got you. Let me put you guys on real quick. All right. Might want to make sure there's no interference. Justice. There we go.
No, there's going to be interference.
Also, I just want to make this just a quick announcement. So if you log in and you are on the panel, please turn off your video until you are being summoned by our esteemed moderators. But just so that way there's no confusion. But I'll give it over to you guys to do your thing. Thank you, Justice, for coming on. Thank you, Mrs. Lisa. And I will sign off for a little bit, and I'll see you guys on the other side.
Yeah, if we could, please make sure our mics are off right now, just so that I know there's some people that may have headphones in.
Okay. Yes. Please turn your mics off as well. Please.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so no, thank you very much, everyone, for being here. I want to thank the energy Zeke is bringing this morning, because he's leading the way with that. I want to thank Billy Sanders for making sure that this avenue is accessible to everyone, no matter who you are. So I'm one of the co-moderators. I'm joined here by Lisa Stewart, and we will be moderating the panel on just education during this the COVID outbreak. So we will moderate the panel of parents and students. I want to thank everyone for being here. I know that, and I'm happy Dr. Macklin brought it up, we are in interesting times right now for our country, but I personally believe, and I know everyone here that's passionate about education, I truly believe that education is the greatest equalizer in our community and our society. It gives everyone a fair chance when you give them resources and you really work on people and give them things to advance themselves and get a better job, a better life, and a better education. Ultimately, that's what our goal here is today, is to hear the needs of parents and students during this time, but let us also be aware of the situation we're in right now. All right, Lisa.
Right. Thank you, Justice. That was heartfelt. I too feel the energy. While we're not physically together during this time, we certainly do not want to silence our voices. And so we appreciate the opportunity to be here. I appreciate the opportunity and privilege to co-moderate with Justice, and appreciate the energy that Zeke has brought and the heartfelt words from our Kansas City Mayor and Dr. Macklin. So thank you to each of you. So we do have, as Justice shared with you, we have parents and students here with us this morning. And so we would like each of you to have an opportunity to just briefly introduce yourself. I am Lisa Garcia Stewart. I am glad to be here. I've been an educator for the last 27 years, and I couldn't agree with Justice more that it is truly an equalizer and provides us opportunities that we otherwise might not have. So we have students with us today and parents, and we want to hear from them. And we do have some questions that we are going to be asking them, and hopefully the conversation will just grow organically. And so we will be looking at the chat if there are questions for our panelists in addition to what we're asking as we are in this rich dialogue together. So what I'll ask of our panelists this morning is if you are able to unmute and introduce yourself, make sure that your video is on, and then we will get into our questions so that our participants know who is with us this morning. So if you could just do that briefly, that will be great. And I'll help start. It looks like, Brian, you want to go first?
Sure. My name is Brian Ray. I am the parent of 2 elementary age students in the Lee Summit School District. I'm also a vice principal in a Kansas City, Missouri public school.
You're welcome. Professor Belcher?
My name is Jalen Belcher. I've been homeschooled for about a year. I've been with Esteem Village for 4 years now, taking multiple programs and classes at Esteem Village. I am a part of summer camp. I'm a summer camp counselor, so I'm a teacher in Esteem Village summer camp, and I'm in 6th grade.
Wonderful. Andy?
I'm unable to start my video, just so you know. I don't know what happened, but
That's okay. Zeke will help us get your camera started.
I'm Andy Sherman. My husband and I have been in the Midtown area for almost 20 years. Our daughter Grace is 9 years old, and
sorry not to interrupt. Sorry, who do I need to put the video on?
Andy Sherman.
Sweet.
I'm unmuted, but my video obviously is not.
Okay.
And while Zeke's doing that, if you're not the one speaking, it's just a helpful reminder to make sure you're on mute because it does pick up the background noise.
There we go. Thanks, Zeke. Daughter goes to Citizens of the World, a charter school in KCPS. I've also been a career-long educator. I started off as a high school teacher, and then I've been a high school counselor for almost 15 years. I'm just finishing my first year as a district administrator in the Park Hill School District. Happy to be part of the panel. Thanks for the invitation.
Thank you. Carol?
Hello, good morning. My name is Carol Kadee Blackwood. I am a parent and a recently elected school board member for Lawrence Public Schools. And I'm happy and proud of my daughter. She got up really early this morning to be with us. So I'll turn it over to Georgia.
Hey, can we take a moment? I think it's Georgia Blackwood. If you could mute your mic.
Okay.
Well, go ahead and introduce yourself and then you'll be able to mute.
My bad.
That's okay.
I apologize.
Because Carol passed it to her, so go ahead.
Hi, I'm Georgia Blackwood. I'm 16. I'm a high school student at Lawrence Kansas School. Lawrence High School, Lawrence, Kansas.
Thank you, Georgia. Vanessa?
Hi, good morning. Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Okay, my video also needs to be turned on, if that can be adjusted, but, oh, there we go. Cool. Good morning, y'all. My name is Vanessa Ramirez. I am a senior at Mizzou, studying political science, and I am currently the student recruiter at Kansas City Girls Prep Academy, and I am also new to the Startland Foundation team and their education program.
Wonderful. Mary?
All right. Hi. Again, my name is Mary Humphreys. I'm serving on the panel as a parent of 2 elementary age children. My wife and I are both teachers in the Lee Summit R7 school district, and that's also where our kids attend.
Well, thank you. Lauren?
Hello. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Wonderful. My name is Lauren Wiley. I was a 2020 senior at Lee Summit North High School. I was also a part of the Summit Technology Teaching Academy program this last year. I was a cadet teacher at Hazel Grove Elementary School in a kindergarten classroom. And I was also the president of our chapter of Educators Rising at Summit Technology.
Well, thank you.
I'm super hyped to be here today. Thank you for inviting me.
Absolutely. Dr. Mosier?
Yes, good morning, everyone. I'm Greg Mosier. I'm the president at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, and really proud to be a part of this panel this morning. You know, one of my strong beliefs is we need to go where people need the education the most. And we have a lot of social and economic inequalities that we need to work on and across our communities, and education is a tremendous part of that. So I'm glad to be a part of this group this morning. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kenise?
Hi, my name is Kenise Salinas, and I'm a principal in the Kansas City, Kansas School District. I feel like I am attached to everyone. I live in Lee Summit. I have a daughter at Mizzou, Vanessa. She knows you, and I'm just excited to be here as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Dr. Macklin, I know you're on the panel, but I want everyone to know you're here. If you just want to reintroduce yourself. Is he still with us? We'll come back. Dr. Waddell?
Good morning. And my video is off as well. I'm not sure if.
All right, we'll have Zeke on it. If you could.
Okay. I'm Dr. Jennifer Waddell. I am the director of the Institute for Urban Education at UMKC and one of the department chairs for our Teacher Education and Curriculum Studies program. And our focus is to prepare, teachers for richly diverse schools in the Kansas City area. So thank you for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
Wonderful, thank you. Anne? Oh, Anne's still there? Are you there?
Were you looking for Ann Ma?
Yes.
Oh, hi. No, I didn't know I'd be speaking this morning, but my name's Ann Ma. I'm the District 4 member for the Kansas State Board of Education. It's happy to be here today. I think my video shut off, so I'm waving hi.
Okay, thank you. Well, Zeke will help us, but thank you so much. We're glad that you're here. Debbie?
I think I just asked you. You can turn on the video. I think you have access now.
Oh, there
we go. Awesome.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Wonderful. Debbie?
Hi, good morning. My name is Debbie Jackson, pronouns she, her, hers. I am an advocate for the LGBT community, trans youth in particular. And we actually homeschool because when my daughter transitioned, she was not able to be accommodated in her affirmed gender at her school. And it's been interesting over the last few months to have so many other parents reach out to us for advice on how to adjust to homeschooling. So I hope I can contribute to the conversation in that way and give some advice for being at home with lots and lots of kids fighting over computers.
Thank you, welcome. And our panelists, our finalist panelists, I hope I say the name correctly. Is it DeBlois?
This is Billy, the interpreter. Du Bois is the other.
I'm the other interpreter.
Got it. Perfect. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Well, welcome to everyone. And this panel is for our students and parents. And we do have some esteemed colleagues that are here representing from both the K-12, secondary, post-education. And so we just are here. We invite you to this forum so that we can also have a rich dialogue. So the conversation and questions will be directed at our students and parents, but there might be an opportunity for you to add, supplement, and engage in the conversation. So while you might have been the primary panelist, we believe that all of these voices will add to the dialogue and welcome you here this morning. So we'll start with our first question. Our first question to the panel, and specifically to our students: how has your district or university supported you throughout the school closure process during this pandemic, and what could have been done better? And anyone can start. You'll see to unmute, and then if you're not speaking, just remember to mute.
This is Jalen Belcher. So for that first question, I'm homeschooled. So I kind of already wasn't getting any support from the school, so it didn't really affect me at all. I have 3 resources. My main 3 resources is, as a homeschooler, are my teachers, my computer, and my internet. So obviously the hardest thing is to make sure all of them have internet access and computers. There's a company called Adobe, And Adobe has a program where students and teachers get 50% off of all products because they need them to learn. Don't we need internet to learn, or don't we need computers to learn? Can schools, internet, and computer making companies work together and come up with some similar program for virtual learning students and get computers and internet access into the homes of the kids that grown-ups say are the future? I think one of the main resources a student needs are or is the teacher. If I do not have access to my main resource, it's going to be hard to use all my sub-resources. So similar to how Mr. Wells is with us, when we are done with our work, I still have access to ask questions, call or email him outside of school and ask him. I do not have to wait until the next day to see him in a class. So that's kind of my answer to question 1.
Thank you, Jalen. How powerful. Anyone else that would like to respond to how the district and university supported you throughout the school closure process and what could have been done better?
Good morning, everyone. Oops, sorry. Good morning, everyone. My name is Eric Hamilton. I'm a rising sophomore at the St. Louis University School of Education. My pronouns are he, him, his. The constant support our university provided was allowing student input and feedback as we were making decisions and communicating with parents. So you really had that student and stakeholder piece when we were making big decisions and how to really communicate that so it didn't sound so, how should I say this, academy talk like, you know, put it in layman's terms. Also from the student perspective, I'm on the Student Government Association, and we used our surplus of funds that weren't spent due to being home to support social emotional wellness resources for students, whether that is an app that provides various counseling and psychological services, as well as some various resources that students could use in a remote format to help support their wellness, as we all were in a very complicated position being Zoomed out.
Thank you, Eric, and thank you for joining. And we also had Brian Foster join, and then I'd like Lauren to respond because she also had was ready to respond. But before Lauren responds, Brian, could you just introduce yourself, please?
Yes, my name is Brian Foster. I work in Sedalia School District 200. We're about an hour, 10 minutes from Kansas City. We're more of a rural, we have a little bit of city, but rural mix, 75-80% for reduced lunch. I've been teaching this is my 21st year, and I'm also a parent in the district also. So I hope I can give both sides of the issues.
Thank you so much, Brian. Thank you, Eric. Lauren, I know you were ready to respond. Go ahead.
Personally, I feel like the Lee Summit District did a very good job in supporting their students throughout the pandemic. From the student perspective, I really appreciated how lenient they were in all of us learning how to effectively learn through just the computer, because I know personally I learn better in a classroom setting, but most of my teachers were very supportive and helpful in adapting to online learning. From somewhat of a teacher's perspective, I was also in a 6th grade classroom, and the Lee Summit District omitted our 2nd semester grades for K through 6th grade, and it was very hard to motivate 6th grade students in them knowing that their grades didn't count. So I found that challenging, but felt like our district did a very good job in supporting our students in continuing to learn anyway.
Thank you, Lauren. Is there anyone else that would like an opportunity to respond to this question? Parent, student, even our esteemed guests here that are actually working in K-12 and post-secondary education?
I think for the most part, as a university student, I would say Mizzou handled it well in the fact that there was an emergency fund that was given to students after coming back home, or getting settled in wherever they were at. But there were a lot of things that were not taken into consideration, and a lot of groups and people that were also not taken into consideration. what happens with students that have either DACA or undocumented? To apply for that CARES Act, you have to have, you know, a social security number and certain information that many undocumented folks don't have. And even then, undocumented folks don't receive any federal help when it comes to being in school all year round without COVID. And so even student housing off campus, that there was no forgiveness in paying any sort of rent. So students were having to pay 2 rents essentially if they had to go back home and help their family, and then their rent back in their hometown, right? And to talk about professors and schoolwork with that, there were a lot of professors that were very understanding and that understood that a lot of college students had to go back home, get 2 or 3 jobs. But at the same time, I had some professors that were like, oh, you couldn't make this homework. Well, there was a deadline and I'm sorry. Like, we need to understand. I think COVID-19 brought out a lot of true colors for professors, for students, and for universities, and just systems in general. And I think people are now starting to see, under unfortunate circumstances, that there needs to be a lot of change within teacher behavior, professional behavior, and systemic behavior.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up, Vanessa. That's absolutely important. And so so I'm the former student body president at UMKC, and I do want to talk on that. I think when the pandemic hit, it showed that there are a lot of holes in a lot of disenfranchised communities that don't have the same resources as the average students. And I know that you brought up DACA recipients, absolutely, and even international students that don't get a lot of the attention as well. And when the airports close and the housing close, where are the international students going to go? There was a big barrier of entry on how to kind of move forward with that. But you have to also put in the perspective, and I know that I shouldn't be on my parents, but my parents claim me as a dependent. So the stimulus check, I know there were a lot of college students that didn't get any type of stimulus check. So there was also that opportunity where a lot of college students were not only having to be ousted out of their dorms and their housing, but then they had to then pay back to travel. Then I think we need to realize that, yes, education will always be there, but life happens. And that we need to understand that these are all people that have different lives or different scenarios. They have a first generation college students, or when you go home, I mean, no one's working. We may have someone pick up other duties like childcare at home or making dinner, or we need to understand that students have lives, and that especially disenfranchised communities, they're going to have to struggle more. They do struggle more, and we need to be well aware of that.
Yeah, this is Greg Mosier. I really appreciate everyone's comments, especially from our students. So at Kansas City, Kansas Community College, when the pandemic really broke, it was right around that spring break time. So we did similar to what other institutions did, and we extended our spring break for 2 weeks for our students. During that time, we really spent a lot of time getting our faculty and classes on an online delivery platform. And it was new to several faculty. So the experienced faculty really helped to work with the new faculty to online education to get them geared up. So some of the things that we did, because we serve a very diverse population, we're right in the heart of Kansas City, Kansas, we extended our deadlines for payment. Extended our deadlines if students wanted to drop to the very end of the semester. We have student housing on campus, so people that we could go home, we encourage them to go ahead and go home, but we do have a lot of international students and international athletes, so those students were allowed the opportunity to stay. We also have students that if we removed them from student housing, they would be homeless. So we let them stay and throughout the semester, and even we had students staying throughout the summer. And also, working with the CARES Act. But the digital divide is something that's huge in Wyandotte County and in Kansas City, Kansas. So we purchased extra laptops, and we're checking out laptops to students and any wireless remotes that we could, and just checked it out to them. They checked it back at the end of the spring semester. And if they're taking classes in the summer, they're checking them out again. So there's a lot more we could do, and we learned a lot from this experience. I really appreciate the students' comments so that we can continue to learn and improve on how we deliver education, especially to a very diverse population.
Yeah, thank you, Dr. Moser, for I really do appreciate that. And me personally, I'm a big fan of KCK community, especially when it comes to your guys' policy on sustainability. I mean, absolutely.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm gonna now ask the next question, and this is to the whole group. If, as predicted by several, online learning will be with us for quite a while, what recommendations do you have for teachers to create useful, interesting, motivational lessons and activities when you're learning at home? Anyone could jump in on that.
So I want to chime in on that one. I'm in a unique position. Like I said, I'm a principal, but I'm also a parent, and I'm also a college student finishing up my doctorate's degree. So what I've learned over the course of the last 3 or 4 months about the shift from in-class to online learning, the biggest issue we're having is that ability to connect with our students and our ability to really engage them. So I know a lot of the reactions to the district. I know the district I serve and the district my children are in was a very knee-jerk reaction because this was such unprecedented. There was no plan. We had to make it up as we went. But having a formulated plan and process in place now and looking forward is how we develop those engaging lessons. Finding a way to bridge that gap of having the face-to-face, having the time to make your lessons tangible for students. We've talked a lot about, with my children at home, how can we take it just from the computer screen and how can we do something with it to where we're not just staring at a screen all day? And we've had those conversations with teachers about using that blended method and engaging them in ways at home, shorter video lessons, and then have them produce a product and come back and display the product and talk about the product is a way to get that engagement with the students. But we've also talked about, we need to start that planning and preparation now in anticipation of it coming. So it's a seamless transition versus what it was this last time where it was very, very abrupt and very, very difficult for people to make that shift.
Brian, thank you so much. That was excellent. I'm in the same boat as Brian, principal, finishing the doctorate, children at home. And as a principal, what I figured out was after COVID, after we figured out that, we had to do what we had to do to make it happen, summer school happened. And for my teachers, I had 11 teachers willing to do a STEM type summer school online. And what I found was when I allowed the teachers to be creative and have them think outside the box, they thought of lessons way more engaging than what we had to do in order to get things done. And so, for instance, I set up an interview and you had to pitch to me what your online summer school would look like. And it had to be engaging, motivating, creative, and hands-on. And so when the teachers had to think outside the box to say, okay, kids have to be engaged for 3 full hours, what are you going to do? They thought of all kinds of neat activities like nature and electricity, and they mailed the materials to the student, and the student was able to do that with them online. And the participation just went out, it skyrocketed. And so we're going to have to not think that this traditional can't be online. We can't just move what we did from the classroom to online and think we're going to get the same type of engagement. And so when teachers were able to then go outside the box and be creative, that got them excited, and it allowed for the students to be excited. And but I just wanted to just say that we have to think beyond our 4 walls and think, because we have the computer, we have a network, we have so much more at our disposal that we have to start thinking beyond the box.
Brian, did you have your hand up?
Yeah, just some of the challenges I have, just I have parents around me, is some of the work that they did get and receive, they could not help their students with, could not help their kids with, especially there's some different new math that's coming on. That was the biggest one, because most of the math classes kept going. So we need to find ways maybe to even help the parents, help them help their students at the same time. That was one of the biggest things. Whenever I found out about I was going to do something like this, I kind of asked around some teachers that I know, some parents in my neighborhood, and they said that was one of their biggest challenges, is almost them understanding the same lesson that their kid was so that they could help them. So I just wanted to throw that out there.
Oh, that's important, Brian. I mean, I've been capturing many of the thoughts about connecting with students, parents, how do we support them? It's exposed a lot of things that we need to think, as Kenny said, that we need to think and do differently as we work with our families. And ultimately, what I hear at even the root of that is, how are we in relationship with our families and our students so that we can respond and support them? As Vanessa pointed out, it's exposed a lot of perhaps perspectives that people have when we need to really be demonstrating compassion to support our students that are also adjusting to the new normal. Did anyone else want to contribute on it? Mary?
Yeah, and Brian, thank you so much for saying that, because I did want to talk a little bit about the special education side. As a parent, not as my role as a teacher, but as a parent, my youngest daughter, she's 5, and she gets speech therapy during the week from her school. And I was just so impressed with how well her teachers and the Lee Summit School District supported her during virtual learning, where she would get one-on-one speech therapy via the computer. But the thing that was probably the most valuable for me as a parent was being able to watch her teacher interact with her on the computer, so that then, I mean, the teacher didn't know it, but she was teaching me how I could help my own daughter. And that's something that I didn't get to see in the classroom. You know, I knew it happened, but just being able to sit back and at 5 years old, watching her be so engaged with her teacher one-on-one, and her teacher would then mail us activities in the mail so we wouldn't have to print them, or if you could print them, she would just email them to you. And it was just awesome to see the teacher one-on-one doing the speech therapy, because then I felt more equipped as a parent to add on to that at home. So thank you, Brian, for bringing that up. That was just, I don't know if that's just one example, but I thought that my daughter got really good speech therapy still from the school district.
Oh, sorry.
For the thought exchange?
Yes, got a thought exchange coming up right now from Mr. Eric Tennyson. Mr. Eric, are you there? Let me find him real quick. Let me find Mr. Eric. Let me find him. There we go.
Finding him, we'll continue this conversation. We're going to pause and take a break for the thought exchange, and then we'll come right back to finish and have some additional questions.
I might have promoted someone else, but cool. Miss Eric is here.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be here. What we're going to do really quickly, and thank you all the panelists, to really dig further into these questions, I'm going to walk you through a thought exchange, and the best way to do that is I'm going to share my screen. If you have a phone handy next to you, you can actually just point your camera at this QR code. Act like you're going to take a picture. Don't take a picture. Just click on the question that pops up, the link that pops up. I'm going to drop a link in the chat as well. And what we're going to do is really quickly, we're going to crowdsource the answers to, we're going to crowdsource some of the best questions you all have for the panelists. So we're going to ask you the question, what questions do you have for the parent and student panelists regarding education during COVID and education in the future? So once you share a thought, you'll actually be exposed to the other thoughts of the people in this room and in this virtual setting. And you can start to rate and review those thoughts based entirely on the merit of the thought itself. Can you see this QR code? So what I'm going to do is be quiet for just a little while. Does anybody need any more time to get into that link? I'll leave it open for just a little bit longer and then I'll switch to the next screen. And I'm going to give us 4 minutes. It's awesome. We've got about 2 minutes left. If you haven't shared a thought, you still have time to do that and then go in and rate those thoughts of others as well. You can start to see a prioritized list that's coming up on the right-hand side. All right, we got about 40 seconds. Just finish rating the last couple thoughts that you're in, and then we'll start to ask the panelists these questions. Awesome, the last few seconds. All right, I appreciate that. So now what we'll do, this is what you all prioritize as the most important questions you want to continue to ask for the panelists. So we'll start with just the top one. And then Justice, and I don't want to step on your toes. So if you want to address these as well, the panelists, if you want to answer any of these questions, go right ahead. Can somebody address the issues relative to online equity and online learning, specifically for students who lack internet access?
So KCPS, this is a really big concern of ours. We you know, and I give a big shout out and a lot of respect to our district office for what they had to do with this one. We had to reach out at a building and do a survey of our students and figure out who had internet accessibility at home and who did not. We made phone calls and we did emails. We even did some home visits to find out. And then the districts went out and provided hotspots. So they arranged where parents and students could pick up the hotspots. We had some that we delivered out. So we really, the first 2 weeks of the quarantine was really all about trying to identify who those students were. In the meantime, to keep the students engaged in learning, the district sent out packets to the students that were ultimately designated as extra credit for students to allow them the ability to increase their grades. So if a student fell behind in a subject because of a hotspot issue, they still had a paper packet they could use to help supplement their grade. And then we also, just like the state of Missouri, went hold harmless. So we didn't penalize the student for accessibility or inability to get online, which is again kind of where that packet fed in. But technology issues, those pieces, our district was really responsive, and they set up a couple different spots for people to be able to drop off machines and pick up their equipment. You know, like everything in quarantine, it had its hiccups here and there, but I think they did a really great job of working with the buildings and the students to get them those devices. And that was our answer, the packets and the hotspots. As soon as we could get them, we were getting them out to parents.
Awesome. Thank you. I'm going to pull up the next question. When I refreshed it, this one actually pulled up to the top. So someone wants to answer that. How do we help low-income families who are struggling with access to online learning? I think you just touched on this a little bit too, but someone else want to expand a little bit further?
This is Jalen Belcher talking. So similar to how I was saying for the first question, a good tool to use is having a similar process or program that Adobe uses, where kids or school districts and internet and computer making companies can work together, maybe get a discount for virtual learning students and stuff. Because all the grown-ups are saying that students are the future, but they don't have any of the materials they need. So I think doing a similar like program, 2-option program would be helpful for everyone if everyone just works together.
Yeah, thank you for those comments. This is Greg Mosier at KCKCC. So, you know, access to the internet is probably one of the most difficult issues that we were working with. We could check out laptops to students, and we had some portable wireless devices, but you know, clearly not enough to go around for everyone that needed them. So we looked at providing information on our website, which we updated just about daily during the beginning of the pandemic, and trying to provide resources. And some of the companies were providing free internet for 3 months, and we tried to promote that as much as possible. But I think access to online learning is going to be one of the biggest things that we need to work with in the future. So we're going to have to work with the corporations and organizations that are in our communities to help provide internet access to those areas where we do have that educational gap. I don't have a solution right now, but I think this is a very important issue that we need to continue more than talking about, but trying to take action on.
Thank you, Dr. Mosier. Again, I'm Kenise Salinas with KCK. We're probably going to have to also continue to make paper packets, look at different resources. We tapped into Scholastic for online for the summer program. And so we provided students with workbooks, literature, packets of books, and we left it outside. We called parents, we had them come up. We even had people drop them off in their neighborhoods or homes. So as a district, we're going to have to reach out to our families and meet them where they are and not assume that everyone has online access.
That's awesome. Thank you. We'll do one more question from the exchange. So this one, Paying attention to signs of abuse and neglect is particularly important during this time. Hotline calls have been cut in half. I've seen stats about 90% too. What can someone, does someone want to speak to this as well?
I can speak to that. I'm actually a sexual assault advocate. I work for the Sexual Trauma and Abuse Care Center in Lawrence, and our hotline calls, it is true, they've been cut in half, but they're becoming more complicated during this time of COVID. They're more complex, and so it's extremely difficult to reach out to these students because you have the chicken or the egg. You have these people who have no internet access or little. I mean, because it's hard to get into, it's hard to qualify for the free internet access if you're the working poor. So the district, we worked really hard to get hotspots to people. But yeah, it is true. And again, it's reminding the administrators that, during COVID, these students they're in quarantine with their perpetrators, and it's complicated. So you just have to keep pushing and encouraging the students and the staff and the school counselors to continue to reach out to these families.
Thank you, Carol. Eric, before you move on to the next one, I just want to make sure, do our students or our young adults have anything else that they would like to contribute to what's been said? I want to make sure their voices are heard also.
Yes, Eric Hamilton again, from St. Louis University. When we were working with students to kind of build, as we were, building the plane in the sky, what we needed to do to help them be successful in the last couple of weeks of our semester. A lot of students who lacked access really preferred keeping courses as asynchronous as possible. Having that flexibility, which I think is definitely more tangible with older students, people in higher ed, secondary level, providing flexibility in terms of how we do assignments. If there was a paper, maybe create it into a creative project, but still reaches those same competencies that assignment was supposed to reach. Also, maybe dealing with grace in terms of deadlines and constant communication in terms of those meetings. We cannot have the business as usual perspective in a non-business as usual time. And what that means is we had to really communicate with academic affairs and provost office to ensure that we had faculty not do 3-hour lectures, because for many students, they don't have the quiet space or an environment where they can have the boundaries to work in the background with students in the background and show their screen and all of that. We really need to be considerate of, someone who does not have the privilege to sit in a classroom all day or sit in a quiet office space that's school student friendly. And I think that's going to become much more ingrained in our new reality.
Another thing, if I can add, another thing that we haven't really touched on, but has kind of been undergirding a lot of the conversation, is the need for relationship building and connections, which is much more difficult in the online environment, and particularly difficult if you always have all the students together at one time. And this is whether we're talking about kindergarten all the way through higher ed. When we're in a face-to-face environment, we have a lot of opportunities to have small sidebar conversations and connections with students and build relationships. So having teachers at all levels, again, from pre-K through higher ed, to really work out a schedule on how am I going to connect individually with my students every week. And whether that be that 5 students a day I make a quick phone call to, or we do an inventory of our families to find out what technology is available, because we're not using phones in the same way. We keep talking about technology, meaning internet access and internet, when we know that students, they get a call from their teacher and realize I'm still special. My teacher cares about me. I have an opportunity to have that one-on-one connection at any level, increases the motivation and the relationship. And even with the previous question about hotline, it could give that opportunity again for the student to feel like I have somebody to talk to as well. So it connects the learning and that relational piece that we know is such a critical component to all of our learning, but particularly students who may have been underserved in our traditional formats.
I'd like to jump in for 1 second for a community of students that we haven't really talked about yet. And it ties into the last question about abuse and neglect, and that would be our LGBTQ students. Oftentimes, the only place that they felt safe and that they could be themselves was in a school environment where they had a GSA, where they had LGBT peers and an affirming teacher. And those might not be the first students that we think of as being in an abusive environment, but right now, for the last 2 or 3 months in particular, they might really be in danger and struggling because they live in an unaffirming home. And in addition to that, I know, going back to the very first question we had on the panel about what schools were doing to support students as they move to an online environment, there were a lot of trans students in the first 2 and 3 weeks of school who were outed to peers, even if they had a school, an affirming school, because shifting to that online environment, systems were set up for online learning that used legal names, and suddenly on screen and in a place like this, their birth name was put on the screen and it unintentionally outed them. And then from there, that allowed for more online bullying from peers who suddenly discovered that they were trans and could sit and use other forms of social media to target them without anyone in the school district knowing. So I think it's important too, if you had a GSA, if you have a peer group of LGBTQ students, that you take the extra steps to reach out to those kids as well.
Yeah, and thank you, Debbie, for speaking to that. That's absolutely important. As a current LGBTQ president at UMKC, that's what our number one issue that we saw is that a lot of our transgender students were crying out, not only for a lot of them either transition or were out at college, and then the epidemic hit, and then they then have to go back home to a rural, I'll be honest, a lot of our LGBT students come from rural parts of the state and come and seek UMKC because it is so LGBTQ friendly. So I know that that was something that we set up, and not only pushing resources for them, but also pushing a hotline and the resources for that, and setting up a discourse. It's almost like a GroupMe, so that they can still access that and not have to use their name, and that they still have a place to access and talk to other LGBTQ students. And in that same breath, that ties in with domestic violence and what we've seen with that happens and targets a lot of our transgender students as well, and really making sure that we're flexible and that we're there and that we're working in coordination with Title IX and making sure if, God forbid, anything happened, they have those resources and they know who to seek out. So I'm absolutely happy that you brought that up, because I know that that is a conversation that doesn't get talked about. I know that they are, I would argue, the most disenfranchised student in the education system right now. But thank you for bringing that up.
If I can jump in real quick, I have another hat that I didn't mention at the start. I'm also on the board of the local GLSEN chapter. GLSEN is an organization that provides a safe place for LGBTQ kids in schools. And we have a tremendous amount of resources to be able to help individual students, as well as schools who are looking to become more affirming. And so if anybody has an interest in engaging our professional development with teachers, engaging our youth services, and empowering youth to stand up for their own rights, and our policy arm, which helps to infuse more LGBT inclusive policies in their schools, please feel free to reach out. I know Debbie has probably other organizations that she can recommend, but I wanted to put a plug in for GLSEN.
Thank you, Andy. Eric?
Awesome. Thank you all. I think we were going to turn it back over for Justice and Lisa to ask some of the questions that came up from the earlier thought exchange that we ran prior to that we could really dig into with the panel too. But no, thank you all for participating. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Eric. We appreciate you in this robust conversation that we're having. The next question that we have is assuming the best way to learn at home is by using technology, which we've been talking about for students who don't have access to the internet, which we've been talking about, the technology divide. What ideas do you have to help those students so that they don't fall behind other students? Is there anything you could do to help?
I think we've made the right directions to, seek out hotspots and give hotspots to those who don't have internet access. But I think also, just as a parent, I am against standardized testing, and it's more important now than more than ever to push for the, at least for the 2021 school year for the state of Kansas to put those on, don't just put those on pause for a year at least, because it's I don't know, because you don't get all the learning that students need to get them prepared to take that testing. That's something that I would advocate for as a parent. Just push for the halting or of standardized testing for now.
I kind of piggyback on what she said there. We kind of focus a lot of our stuff on our test scores and everything else. And I think we need to now switch into this online role. We need to really focus more on establishing relationships, keeping track of our students, letting them know that the goal is not to get the certain proficiency or advance on that. The goal is that they are constantly learning and that they constantly have support, no matter if it's hotspots or packets or we can mail them. We didn't mail our stuff to our students, but that's something I'm going to bring up now. Like what Mary said, that they mailed her stuff to her students. I would have loved that for my kids as well. So I think more as far as online goes, I think communication and establishing relationships is going to be a lot more key to make sure everybody's on the same page and not necessarily focus on hitting that bullet standard every time.
Going back to what Sinise said earlier about having teachers think out of the box, I'm going to say something that may be a little unpopular, but when I was a school administrator, students in my school didn't want to do packets when they were there with the teacher watching them and accountability. And so going back to one of the previous questions around, particularly for families that are working and they don't have the space for students, they don't have somebody that's standing over the student's shoulder, making sure that they're keeping track, is really thinking of how can we encourage teachers to create activities that are coming out of student interests, that are project-based, that are independent, that then there's a check-in so students feel like they are something that they want to be doing. And so it is an opportunity really to push all of us into thinking a little bit differently and outside the box about teaching and learning, because we know that if we direct our own learning, we are more excited. And so having students think about problems in their community or things around their home and doing some of their own exploration can get to those pieces, as long as we have that closing the loop on accountability of what they were doing independently. One of the schools that we work with created for students a must do and can do list, but many of those tasks, so it helps students like to have checklists, even at the college level, to really think through, did I get through my must do's? What are my can do's? And if they're independent work that are centered around students' interests, they've got a better chance that they're going to be able to do those, even if they don't have a family member that has the capacity to be working from home and homeschooling at the same time.
Yeah, I totally agree with Dr. Waddell. I think I work with Kansas City Startup Foundation, and a part of our new education program is kind of rallying in different students. Right now, we just did our Mecca Challenge. So we'll bring in students for a 2-day kind of challenge, right? And they are mostly high school students. And so we kind of do this like accelerated program, I guess you could call it, but it's around design frame thinking. And so you basically give this challenge to high school students and you say, what can we do? You walk them through real world scenarios, real world issues, and you say, what can you do to solve this? And I think that's when a lot of students click and say, oh, like these are my issues. Like I'm interconnected into this somehow, you know? Our last recent Mecca Challenge was about how can you as a high school student make a better learning environment for you moving forward with COVID-19. And so a lot of them came up with cool apps revolving around like mental health, revolving around like socioeconomic boundaries. A lot of them came up with like an online tutoring site for them, so that if they're working at night or in the morning or in the daytime, like there's somebody there tutoring with them, not necessarily the professor, the teacher, but you know, I think it's really cool when students get, just how Dr. Waddell was saying, when students get on a passion project and they get around that design framework thinking, it gives self-autonomy, one, but it also shows that you are in charge of your own self, you know. And I think once students finally click that we're all interconnected into these issues and into a bigger system, then it kind of helps them run, I guess, more passionately along with that work.
Well, and that's the goal that we should. Dr. Waddell and then also Vanessa Ramirez, you guys have just excellent points as it relates to student learning. And that's where really personalized learning comes into it. Students should have voice and choice in authentic real world learning experiences. Packets are the worst way to learn. I mean, we talk about, packets, and packets are only supposed to supplement learning. But unfortunately, we see packets as being the main source of learning. And then, back to answer the question that was proposed, when you talk about equity, I would ask, how are students doing COVID-19 with mental challenges? How are their issues being addressed, right? Because most of those students who suffered from mental challenges or who needed additional therapeutic services, that happened during the school day at school. And so with those students not being in the school, being able to answer those questions are always key. I know in Kansas, there's a lot of tornado drills that happen during the school year. And in Missouri, there's a lot of fire drills that happen during the school year. And so if you do the math, I think there's 12 to 15 that happen, fire drills or tornado drills a year. But in 2019, before COVID, so in 2019, we averaged one school shooting a week. So my question would be, I know that we're spending a lot of time focusing on the physical building, and the last time a school building burned down in the United States was 1959, by the way, right? But so how are we addressing the mental, right? Those are real in-depth equity questions that aren't superficial or topical, but delve down to the root.
Yeah, Dr. Macklin, I think you're right on, because along with the education, the students have to be mentally prepared and ready. And if they're going through trauma, they can't do that, no matter what the trauma is, right? So we have 2 counselors that are full staff, and we really looked at some creative ways to how to help and reach out to our students, and doing a lot of one-on-one video sessions, and a lot of just communication and back and forth, because we did see an increase for those that needed some social emotional assistance as we went through these times. Just being stuck in one place and not being able to go out and socializing, just the isolation that a lot of people experienced, along with some of the other stressors that were mentioned with online bullying. We've got to be more proactive in that and look at our local resources that we have with our institutions and organizations, and then partnering with external organizations like NAMI and other groups that can provide assistance. We really have to look at partnering, because the needs are going to be so much greater as we continue working and living within this pandemic environment.
And also, I think, Dr. Mosier, that's a great point. I think that we focus on, and I think, I'm not quite sure, I think it was maybe Dr. Waddell or Mary who mentioned state testing piece. It's really not about, it should not be about that little number in an Excel spreadsheet at the end of the year that determines how the year went. It should be about growth. As long as students are growing academically, then the long range, they will be where they need to be academically. State testing, and I know Deanna, who's not on this panel right here, will love this, but state testing in the country last year was off $1.9 billion. Now, let me just put that into the framework. If $1.9 billion was given to provide every single school district with early childhood education, I think we all be in a pretty different situation.
But I think, Dr. Macklin, money runs everything, and that is so true. But I think it goes back to leadership. Teachers are only going to do what their leader asks them to do. And so I believe that us as leaders have to push teachers and educators to do something different. because at the end of the day, if we don't push them, if we don't think culturally, the reason why I told my teachers that they had to bring something more than just sitting in front of your computer and just handing out something is because I know from the standpoint of a culturally relevant leader that my students are not going to learn anything by paper and pencil. And so when a teacher said, well, Kenise, can I bring, I'd like to travel around Kansas City and do landmarks and show our kids what is around the metropolitan area. And then we will have discussions. And I said, absolutely. I said, do that. And so, you know, if you don't push them to think, they're not going to think. And it's going to be up to leadership to force teachers to think outside the box.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. As a parent, my kids, you know, I'd be up in my office working and my kids would come to me with some of the most random questions and we'd have to go find the most random things. And they're wanting to, Dad, I got to build this and I've got to go find this. And I'm like, what are you, how is this, what is this process? But what I saw was they were so excited and they were engaged and they weren't just staring at a screen. They were driving me nuts, but they were all over this different piece. And I think they got more out of it than that. And so I really commend those teachers for thinking outside the box, because it did make that piece enjoyable for my kids. And as I looked at them, I was like, you know what? Yeah, he didn't spend 30 minutes a day in math like he should have. He only spent like 15 minutes working on it. And my daughter didn't read this book for an hour today, but she did these other things. And I felt like they were still getting something substantial out of it. So for those leaders out there pushing those teachers to create and to challenge, and even for the parents out there, you know, pushing your teachers to, you know, get my kid off in front of that screen. Don't just go with the status quo. Let's do something bigger here.
Yeah, I did a capstone on kind of how we should move forward. That was kind of like my culminating project this semester. And I kind of came up with like the theme that, you know, a lot of people have been saying we had spring learning loss, but we have fall opportunity. We have opportunity to personalize learning more than we've ever had before. We have opportunities to go beyond brick and mortar that we probably didn't have back in February before COVID-19 came in town. We have so many opportunities to engage students and meet their needs and help develop their agency as learners that we couldn't have imagined before. So let's use these opportunities to customize experiences and, you know, kind of go up, you know, beyond just outside the box, just go off script. Sometimes, you know, giving that flexibility and sometimes experimenting and learning forward and failing forward, we will come up with some of the greatest innovations that we've, you know, ever encountered, because we weren't worried about meeting that that number in a spreadsheet that Dr. Macklin was talking about. We're worried about the growth of our learners and supporting them to be in a 21st century world where most likely it will be another pandemic in their lifetime, and adjusting and being agile and having those skills to move forward with all the challenges that life presents us.
Eric, I'm going to take that. I'm going to steal that fall opportunity. If you hear that again somewhere, see that somewhere, okay? I'll give you credit for it though. Okay, only if you're in the room. If you're not in the room, I'm not going to give you credit for it. Okay, so fall opportunity, I like that one there. So, and I will say back to Brian Ray's point, really as leaders and educators, this should never happen again. And I don't mean the pandemic piece, that may happen again, but I mean the unpreparation piece. Schools and school districts right now should be preparing for the fall, are prepared for the fall. And so loss of learning does not happen. Normally, we're coming together after 3 months or 2.5 months of loss of learning over the summer. Now we're looking at 6 months of loss of learning. And so being able to get those preparation pieces in key so that it doesn't happen again is powerful. And then Dr. Greg Mosier, I want to commend you for your work with the truly the trauma and social justice, because trauma, social justice, restorative practices, a lot of buzzwords, but they're not similar. They're all different. And so the work that you've been able to do, or that you're having, that being done, is just phenomenal to be thinking outside the gap to be able to get those things done.
Thank you, Dr. Macklin. I wonder, and thank you, Eric. I wonder if Jalen or Georgia or Vanessa again have response or thoughts to what those that are in education, post-secondary education in the community have been saying in response, so that we're including you, that we're not doing things to you, we're including you in this planning and talking. So I welcome your thoughts to what's been shared.
I would actually like to answer the second question. I've been thinking about that one for a while.
Absolutely.
Okay, so the biggest problem to that is not having access to the curriculums or materials that schools have. Besides that, it would be pretty tricky to answer because homeschool and public school is so different. Like, homeschool is more individualized. My curriculum is more tailored to my needs. To me, homeschool is like home cooked food, and public school is more like a fast food restaurant. I don't want to be dependent on an institution to teach me, just like how I don't want to be dependent on McDonald's to feed me. A lot of kids are hindered in school since everything is structured the same. Like, my sister is really good at drawing. She liked to design an interior and exterior designs. We had the same schools, teachers, and parents. We both also started out in robotics. She just wasn't really into that kind of stuff. So my parents gave her the tools she needed to do in her art, and she ended up in a tech field anyway, because now she's doing game and art animation on her own at age 9. She now knows the importance of engineering because she needs it to do game and animation design. So Einstein wasn't good at everything, but he did improve and excel at what he was good at. Did you notice how a lot of the geniuses are dropouts? Einstein dropped out of school. Nikola Tesla dropped out of university. Why are the supposedly smartest people in the world not learning at school? If I have a basketball team, I am not going to teach a tall guy how to be a point guard. I'm going to teach him how to be the best center. I'm going to put him in the best position to win. If LeBron trained his whole life to be a center, he would not be in the NBA. And if you have 7 centers be a point guard, that team's not going to make it to the playoffs. So why are we training kids to be the same? We need a pre-built curriculum, a curriculum that goes over the basics. Then we choose the paths of the kids for what they master and excel at. So that way we have the best engineers going into engineering. We have the best artists going into environmental game design. Bill Gates was forced to go to the gym. That did not make him do it out of school. Bill Gates is not going to play basketball in the NBA. He has no interest. So why try to make kids that are excellent designers become scientists if they have no talent or desire to be those things? Why do we wait until college to train kids and to master what they succeed in? When I was at school, I heard a lot of kids that want to be lawyers and cops. Lawyers must go to school for 8 to 12 years after high school to defend and learn the laws. But cops just graduate high school enforcing the laws that they never learn. Since you don't need a degree to be a cop, shouldn't we teach kids that want to be cops the law, since we know it takes 8+ years to learn? Shouldn't we teach a kid that wants to run a business finances instead of forcing him to learn how astronaut suits work? So those are just some key points that I wanted to go into from a homeschool and public school perspective, also a teacher.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Justin.
Yeah, so I do want to move the discussion on, and this is to the whole group. And this is specifically to the parents, but I also want the students to speak up as well. How has your student's district or university supported parents throughout the school closure process? And what can districts or universities do to support students who need additional resources and assistance? So kind of, and no one jumped to this.
Well,
Could you type that into, that was kind of a lengthy question. Could you type it into the box,
Yep.
please? Thank you so much.
In terms of supporting parents, I know, at least from my experience at SLU, it was about having clear and constant communication, not putting information out too early. You know, you don't put out information where you don't have a decision. Just, you want to keep your information succinct. You want to be affirming. You want to be supportive. Have a decent term to comfort parents. Give parents resources of people they can contact when they have questions. In terms of parents and supporting students, since it is higher ed, it's a lot more of the student end involved there and student engagement. Telling students that there's resources they can go to. Having, you know, this is a privilege, but giving some financial resources to students who are struggling. We've mentioned it earlier, those student emergency relief funds were crucial. Assisting parents in canceling out contracts if they were too far and students lived off campus, working with our neighborhood partners in terms of those who live in apartments off campus to provide rent relief and rent forgiveness. Working with parents, with students who may be immunosuppressed and are worried about next year, you know, now that we are having in-person classes, giving them that flexibility so that they know that their student, that their child is safe. Just giving options, being there and being able to listen, being able to see, value, and love each and every one of the parents and students.
My daughter's school focused on kind of the social emotional well-being of parents, which I really appreciated. They made it very clear that we were not to be their teachers, that their teachers were their teachers, and we were to be providing a quiet space for our students and helping them with the technology when needed and connecting them with their teacher if they needed additional support, which for parents like me who really wanted to learn the new math was a little frustrating, but I appreciate that they wanted to keep the teaching with the teachers. And so there were a series of scheduled Zoom meetings at various times of the day, mornings, midday, afternoons, evenings, to kind of accommodate parents' schedules, to be able to have parents connect and be able to kind of process and debrief what the experience was like being at home. Maybe they weren't at home, maybe they, you know, had to go to a emergency childcare center set up for essential workers, or they had to rely on their family networks, or perhaps even older siblings. And so I thought that was a unique approach, and one that I think was really beneficial, was really just as we would pay attention to the social emotional well-being needs of students, we should also be mindful of those for parents and guardians.
I like to brag about is our district is we, you know, as a social worker, we talk about the Maslow's hierarchy of needs, but we made sure that was one of the first things that we did as a district was to provide packed lunches to our students. And it didn't matter. The children didn't have to be in the car. We understood that one parent or an adult would go out and get the food for everybody. So that way people wouldn't have to leave their homes. But I think we did a really good job, and we partnered with local restaurants, not chains, local restaurants to support them as well. I think we did an outstanding job on that. And we did everything else that people have already mentioned, but that's what we did extra. And we had volunteers come in and hand out the lunches.
So my kids' district, both of my children are on IEPs. So as a parent, I was really concerned about what that was going to look like. And the district did a really good job of going above and beyond with communicating the how they're going to get services, and how they're going to adjust some of those accommodations. My son is dyslexic, so you know, even though I'm in education, I am not prepared to work with an elementary student that has dyslexia. I'm not trained. I don't understand. So they were really great working with my wife and I to learn how to teach him and how to meet him where he is. Because as a former high school English teacher, I was used to dealing with a whole different grade level of students. And so they were really great with that. And then making sure we understood my daughter's plan. So, you know, that's something that we don't think about. Most students don't have those kind of issues. And my kids' districts really took the time to help my wife and I through that process, which was really stressful for us. But it was beneficial and it worked out in the long run, I think.
I also think I'm interested in the group as we think about coming to an end. We've talked about the relationships. We've talked about creating this trauma awareness. We're doing that in our district as well, but it's more than just a program or response. How do we deepen those relationships? How do we develop a level of understanding of how to respond to students, as Vanessa started out the conversation earlier today? And even as I think of how profound the words that Jalen has shared, being both a student that's experienced in homeschool and has been in public school. So I really am curious from the young adults, how do the adults do that so that you're engaged in this process? That yes, all the training around relationships, social emotional are important, but it's not a program, because really adults have to shift their thinking, because we can't change students' experiences or how they come to school or what they're experiencing at home. So what might be some thoughts that you have that you can enlighten the adults that are on this panel?
I think there's a lot of things to think about when it comes to building relationship with students, and even the way we teach students in traditional school settings, right? So just how Jalen was talking about, not every student has the same language. Not every student is going to learn the same way, and not every student has the same interest. And so I think learning a student's language, learning a student's interest, seeing, show me, hey, show me what you got, instead of, oh, this is how you get to the last solution, and this is like the exact procedure you're supposed to follow, right? I had a lot of teachers in high school that changed my life with show me what you got, instead of did you get the right answer, right? So it's more of like, show me where you're at and I will help you get to where you need to be, instead of just you're on your own. And I think the social and emotional learning aspect of that is very important as well. We need to support students mentally and psychologically inside of the classroom, inside and outside of the classroom. I question why we have more security and police officers inside of schools than social workers. I question why we have more police officers inside of our school buildings than actual social workers, counselors doing work with students, helping give resources to the communities, helping give resources to teachers. I question that all the time. And not just question why we have police officers, but question why we have police officers or security inside of schools that are predominantly people of color. So these things are not made just out of the whim, you know. These are institutionalized things that make schools feel like a prison to school pipeline system, and it is implemented to be a prison to school pipeline system. So I think we need to like rethink the entire system the entire education system, when we want to talk about social and emotional learning, when we want to talk about being friendly and making these connections with our students, with our teachers. Because if your school feels like a prison, if your school looks like a prison, then most likely we are not going to be able to, you know, get to the conversation of, oh, I'm willing to build this connection with my student. I'm willing to build this connection with the families of my student. So let's rethink all of these things that make our school feel not like a school: metal detectors, police officers, security guards, and let's see what we can substitute into those same things, and that will help us better our communities and our schools for social and emotional learning.
I actually want to add a bit on that. So right now, school is not based on what they want to be a master of or at. We ask them what they want to be, but how do you help them accomplish that? As a homeschooler, I get to decide what I want to be and do. It's not up to my teachers. It's not up to other kids that don't even want to be at school distracting me from my goals. Most of the time, teachers are disciplining kids, not educating them. Most institutions are teaching kids how to behave, not how to succeed. So are these educational schools or behavior institutions? Another thing to help schools is to be cooperative rather than competitive. Now, that doesn't mean cheating is okay, but I should not have to fear getting in trouble for helping my classmates. We're a team no different than a sports team. We should all be helping each other graduate. We should be helping our teammate on what he is struggling with, rather than trying to outshine him. A basketball team plays as a team, not as individuals. If one person's lacking and they do not help, everyone's going to lose. Mr. Wells is not just a teacher, he is our teammate, he's our coach. If we win a ring, he wins one too. But does Bill Gates' teacher get credit for what he did? Did his high school teacher? No, because they weren't a team. They were just one of his teachers. These sports teams stayed together for years. I am not at school, but I am in a robotics team. I consider them teammates, coworkers, not just someone sitting next to me at a desk. At school, teachers do not even cooperate with each other. In my summer camp I am teaching, we have around 5 teachers and robotics AI working together with the students. And having the ability to go in breakout rooms and split up is amazing. It's like so much easier because if I have trouble finding right words, I have like 4 different people of backups that jump in and try to help. We can send around like 2 people into a breakout room and they can work on a group of students that aren't on the right pace, and then we can have a main class and another session. We have a lot more viability and opportunity to help students. It takes a team of lawyers to defend one person, a team of doctors and nurses working to save one man's life. But we have 1 teacher per 30 kids. This is not going to work. So just to add on to what Vanessa said, I hope I'm saying your name right. That's my opinion on things.
Thank you, Jalen.
I would like to go.
Go ahead, Lauren. Go ahead, Lauren.
I would like to go back to how schools not only emotionally supported our parents, but something that's really frustrated my family. I had the privilege of actually having Mr. Ray as a teacher at Lee Summit North. And in his classroom, everybody, like you guys have been talking about, everybody is a team in Mr. Ray's classroom. And I strive off of that emotional connection to my teachers and my administrators and everybody that works in my school. And as a senior who missed out on a lot this year, I felt like my school really lacked the emotional response that was needed for our students. Although I acknowledge that there were issues far greater than my graduation, I felt that one key piece that our school was missing was the acknowledgement that that was a big moment in my life that I will be missing out on. And I feel like that is something that needs to be better prepared for in the future, on how to respond more effectively to not just the parents, but also the students. Because the way that I found out my graduation was canceled was through Facebook. It was a post from a parent of another student. And I felt like that wasn't handled very well. So to go back to how teachers need to connect to their students, I feel that you can't go to a higher level of learning without that basic feeling of support and love from your teachers. And going forward, I feel that something that many teachers need to educate themselves on is the issues that are really important to their students. And like y'all have also mentioned, calling their students or reaching out individually to their students, because I feel like that was something that really lacked in my situation.
Thank you, Lauren. Justice and I are just exchanging conversation that this is a powerful conversation, and we certainly do not want to end the conversation, but we do. But know that this platform is not going to end, right? This is our virtual extension. We'll be reconvening again in October, and expect that each of you will continue to participate, because we have some to respond to for the conversation that was shared here today, specifically from the representation of our students, our young adults, that I'm sure as each of you do, I feel compelled to how we're going to shift things and respond to continue to make sure that we are contributing to the success of our students and not just shaping into what we think that education should look like, if we really are truly in a collaborative, collective responsibility to how we're shaping and influencing the lives of our young adults. So we thank you, Justice, and I thank you. We appreciate the time that you have dedicated with us this morning. We are going to have another thought exchange, so don't leave just yet. I'm going to turn it over to Zeke and to Eric for the thought exchange, and then we have the lunch co-moderators in conversation at 11:30. So please do not leave. We still have a full day planned, and I just thank you, Justice. I don't know if you have any final thoughts or words as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to thank everyone for, the amazing input we had a very, very diverse group, and I want to thank everyone for speaking up. I know that these are interesting times for all of us, but I know that when we stand united, we're going to have a better education system, and that means a better society in general. So I want to thank everyone for, waking up early on a Friday morning and being here, and it shows me that education is important to absolutely everyone here. So thank you again, and thank you, Lisa, for being a good co-moderator.
Absolutely, it's my pleasure. And thank you to all of those that are participants and were able to watch and look at the chat. There's lots of information and connections being made, so make sure you look at that as well. We're all connected. So I'm going to turn it back to Zeke and to Eric for the thought exchange.
Awesome. Thank you, moderators. Thank you, Justice. Thank you, guys. Thank you for doing this. This is an awesome job you guys did today. I really appreciate you guys for moderating this group. And thank you for everyone who was on the panel. Thank you, Carol. Thank you, everyone who's here today. Thank you for bringing out your time to join us today. This is awesome. Now I'm going to give it over to Mr. Eric to pull up the thought exchange, and let's get to it.
Awesome. Thank you, everybody, and the panelists. I really appreciate you. What we're going to do for the next really half hour is we're going to run this exchange to inform the lunch that the dignitaries are having. So the questions that you want to ask them, the questions that you want to get answers to, we ask that you participate in this exchange the same way you did last time. I put the link in the chat, but you can also point your phone at this screen, act like you're going to take a picture, and then just click on the pop-up that comes up from there. And we'll provide this information to the dignitaries at lunch so we can get answers for you all as well. Does anybody need any more time to get into the link, or can I move on to the next one? I would say the panelists as well, don't forget to contribute into this conversation. You're members of this community, so you can participate as well. And what we can do, since we still have quite a few people here and quite a few people on the panel, if you're interested, we can answer some of these questions or start to address these too, just to talk through them, to fill the space and get these over to the dignitaries in the meantime once the exchange ends. So the timer will end, but the exchange won't actually close. If any of the panelists are still here and we want to talk through some of these, I'm happy to facilitate that too. We can start to dig into this. Does anybody on the panel still here want to start to talk about how we can give teachers the adequate PD that we're looking for as well?
What was the question again, Eric?
Sure, and we can just leave this here to kind of look at it as a visual too. But the question was, if anyone wants to speak to us, is how can teachers access adequate PD now with budgets being slashed?
I can talk a little bit about that. Actually, on this panel, I'm the parent. I'm a parent on this panel, but I'm also a teacher and I also lead district-wide PD. But right now, there's a tremendous amount of professional development being offered for free through a lot of social media networks and things like that. Also, I've seen a lot of teachers and administrators getting really creative with PD, starting to see a lot of like Netflix watch parties, dealing with, not so much as dealing with online learning, but dealing with some anti-racism training, tough, difficult conversations about race and things like that. But I think a lot of quality PD is being offered for free. It's just figuring out what PD you need as a teacher, knowing where my weaknesses are and what kind of PD I need to seek out. But I think that there's a lot of free or lower cost professional development being offered online right now.
I don't want to sound naive, but what is PD?
Professional development.
Oh, okay.
I agree with the last speaker. I'm sorry I couldn't see the speaker's name, but I'm also a district administrator and my inbox is flooded with PD opportunities. I think the challenge is really kind of weeding through and making sure it is high quality and offering those opportunities in a way that, aligns with, Dr. Macklin talked about, we need to have a plan. We needed to have a plan, a month or so ago. So kind of really articulating what that plan is and then providing opportunities that are more as evidence-based as we can possibly hope in these unprecedented times. But there's never been more opportunities for all educational professionals to be able to do their own learning. It is just a matter of kind of figuring out what is the framework, because if you veer too far from a district or a school's sort of framework, it may not be the best use of time. It might help to push the school in ways that it needs to be pushed, which is great. But in terms of the here and now, as we prepare to return here pretty quickly, just being thoughtful about what PD is really needed and is of a sufficient quality, I think is important.
That's awesome, and why we have you all as we have a captive audience. We can dig into a couple of these too. So yeah, I know we talked about internet access a couple of times. Beyond that, what can we do to support parents and students?
I'll speak on this just briefly. And someone brought this up earlier. I think understanding that every single individual, every single student and parent has a different situation. And that's why it's so important to have relationships and to understand that we have to understand that. Yes, there's always going to be an education system and education, but people and families are reacting to this epidemic in very different ways based on where you live, your income, what job you're in. And a lot of people are unemployed and or are picking up, a lot of our students are picking up additional roles they didn't have to. I know a lot of, especially disenfranchised communities, they work so hard to get their kids into school, and then they have to come back and usually pick up a lot of additional roles like at-home care, cooking dinner, looking after their siblings, going and getting an additional job if need be. Like, we need to understand that, yes, it's important to educate people, but we need to establish a relationship. And when you have a relationship, then there's then that trust for basic communication to then share your problems or share issues that are going on in your life that may be a detriment to your education.
So Justice, I want to touch on that as well. As a parent and leader, I did not prepare myself for the emotional toll of homeschooling and the quarantine situation for my kids. My personal children, I thought they were pretty solid kids, you know, but over the course of the quarantine, I saw particularly my son more than my daughter start to crack and start having some real social emotional issues that I had never experienced, and honestly I never thought I was going to have to look for. And then as a building leader, I would get messages from students that were very personal in nature, that we had never talked like that in school, and I'd never, you know, we'd never had those kind of conversations. I always make it a priority to build relationships, but I was not prepared for quite the toll it took on the population of both my students and my children. So I know as an educator, I had to reach out to my social worker to help prepare me for how to deal with some of these things and how to educate me. And that was something that, you know, no matter, very few leadership classes I've ever taken help you learn to deal with those type of issues. So when we look at how can we support parents, you know, that's a real conversation we need to have, because it blindsided me and it hit me hard as a leader and as a parent. And if you don't have the tools, or more importantly, if you don't know where to get the tools, if schools can help explain to parents where to get those resources, if they can make some of those resources available, it's invaluable, because I know I leaned heavily on my social worker to help me through some of that.
This is Ann Ma. Can I share some of the things we're doing in Kansas?
Mm-hmm. Go ahead, Ann.
Okay, thank you. I know one of the things we're trying to we've got right now a team of more than 700 educators working on our back to school plan, which I'd like to talk more about, but I don't want to go on and on. I want to focus for a second on the social emotional thing. Assessments are going to be more important than ever when we get back to school. Kids are going to be all over the board academically, but we also know they've been through a lot of social emotional stuff. So we're stressing doing social emotional assessments like SABRS or some of those other things that are out there when kids come back, because we are planning to have kids back in school in August. It won't look like a year ago August, but we plan to have them back. But those social emotional assessments are going to be even more important, I think, than maybe the academic ones. And we are trying to get the schools to move toward more interim assessments to measure progress rather than just depending on one big test, you know, at the end of the year. But the other thing we've done, the legislature put $10 million into a mental health pilot to put counselors and mental health people in the schools, working closely with their community mental health centers to provide better services. And those pilot schools are reporting amazing results. fewer absences, fewer disciplinary problems, better academic results, fewer suicides. It's an amazing pilot. If every state could do this, and if we could scale it up to every school, wow, the impact it would have would be amazing. Because when I visit districts, I have 29 districts in my board area, probably mental health is the #1 problem that every school board identifies as the thing they have to deal with. You know, schools are the #1 mental health provider, mental health services provider in the state. And every teacher will tell you they're dealing with more stuff. Kids are dealing with more stuff than ever, certainly way more than when I was a kid. You know, these ACEs, adverse, you know, events that kids are dealing with, we've got to figure it out. It's just, it's a #1 problem, I think, and we're taking it head on. I think Kansas is probably one of the first 2 states in the nation to set standards for social emotional growth. And now with this extra step of putting mental health care providers in the schools and trying to get school districts to focus on social emotional growth as much as academic, I think we're going to make a dent in this problem. So that's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Anne. I'm a big fan of Ann Moss. I went to one of her listening and learning circles last summer, and I learned so much from her in just, you know, those few hours. But in the Lawrence Public School system, we have, you know, the pilot schools that Ann Moss spoke about, but they're really we are promoting mindfulness in the schools. Just it's that first piece of the mental health support for our students, and it seems to be working. I taught mindfulness at the VA, and I love it, and I teach it to my kids, so I'm very fortunate that I was able to learn it and teach it. I just, as a school board member, I'm going to push and promote mindfulness as much as possible to keep our scholars out of the populations that I've served. And I don't know if I answered the question. Thank you. But going back to that the previous question, I think also we need to think about the parents, supporting the parents who are the teachers who are at home. When my daughters were taking the Zoom classes, sometimes their younger kids would come in the room, "Hey mom, when's lunch?" So we really need to be mindful about the teachers who are working from home, who are working with our students. Thank you.
That was my wife, my life. My wife's an educator as well. So when I was doing school business and my wife was teaching her classes at the high school level, and I have 2 children at home trying to do school, the challenge was real. So I agree with that.
If we, Eric, do we have any other questions we could go back to?
Yeah, give me just 1 second.
No.
No, I like the conversation. We can keep digging in. I was on the parent side as well, but so my wife was in the office every day, and I was at home with a 5-year-old and a 2-year-old. So I understand. I feel you. Let's see. Okay, so this one, evidence-based practices should drive education decisions. Given the unprecedented nature of this, what research should we rely on?
So I know I've been talking a lot, I apologize, but we actually discussed this in one of my university classes I'm taking. The unknown nature of this, one of the first things you fall back on is Maslow's, the hierarchy of needs. If your student isn't safe and fed and taken care of, then they will not learn. We know that. Research has shown if they don't have their basic needs met, nothing else is going to happen. And I know a lot of people think it's education overreaching some boundaries when we start getting into some of those home things, but we're in the homes now. Like it or not, we are in your front rooms, we're in your kitchens, we're in your bedrooms, because wherever your kid's learning is where we have to go now. So, you know, we talked about it earlier, KCPS and a lot of the other districts have talked about, you know, how do they get the equipment to the kids, but we also had food service set up. We were giving lunches and dinners to kids. We were working with shelters to make sure kids weren't homeless during COVID because people were losing their jobs. We were coming up with ways to get students to the doctor's office. And these are things that we did because we knew if we didn't provide these services for our students, nothing else is happening. So Maslow is always a starting point for something like this.
We'll dig into a couple more. This is a good one. What collaborative structures exist for educational professionals in schools to share ideas, hypothesize best results, gather data? What do you all use that makes you better?
There are professional associations that have served this purpose and kind of convening discussions and collaboration. Again, just kind of back to the previous question about there really not being a playbook for this, just being able to put the folks that are developing plans and implementing plans in the same room to be able to just kind of, again, hypothesize best practices, rely on established bodies of research like Brian talked about, just knowing about the basic needs need to be addressed and provided for. And so I think that's the place to start. And then a lot of, I think, metro areas, at least Kansas City is one, will have kind of regional consortia of educational professionals, whether it be at the district office level or school principals and that kind of thing. So I think they're there. I'm just encouraging folks to reach out and know this is a community-wide problem that is going to have a lot of similar elements from district to district.
I don't think you can underestimate the power of a PLC, professional learning community, within your building. Education is not isolation. Just kind of like Andy, like you said, you got to get people in the room, got to get the voices talking. Education is a people business. You got to have the people there.
Thank you, Andy and Brian. We are approaching the 11:30 hour. We thank you again for the rich conversation. If everyone can move to the dignitary luncheon. So we'll leave this session and we'll move to the next one. So thank you again. Thank you, everyone.